Welcome to the Wild Way, episode number 1. I'm Peter Jones, entrepreneur, husband, father of soon-to-be 2, and these are the rest of the bros.
I'm Billy Bernhard, campus minister, new husband, brand new podcaster, and leader of men.
Charles Roman. I'm a worship leader, singer, creative, and man, we're just excited to be here with you guys.
Yeah.
This is the beginning.
The beginning, episode number 1.
Episode
The
1.
beginning, baby.
Hey.
So Charles, tell us how we got here.
Man, it's been a journey. How did we get here? First of all, I guess I have to say how I met you guys.
Okay.
Church, obviously. We know each other from church. Freedom Church, Philly, what's up? I met Billy just randomly in the lobby, just doing what he does, being Mr. Popularity. You know, everybody just flocks to Billy. Not me. I was trying to run away. But yeah, I felt when I first met you, it was so awkward because I'm not really great with conversation and you're so good at it. And you just kept trying to talk to me.
So
and I'm
not
like,
much has changed.
Not much has changed. Like, why am I here? So I was like, felt so awkward. But yeah, bro, you invited me to your small group. We got to know each other through small group.
Yeah.
Pete was in a small group.
Yeah.
I actually met you on a church retreat
Yeah.
like 2 years ago.
Yep.
2 years ago, man. So it's like 2 years that we've known each other.
Yeah.
But I guess the way we got here is there's conversations that we've had. You know, we obviously built a friendship, a brotherhood, discussing what it means to be a man, experiences that we had that we have not had, what is missing in the world, what the younger guys need, what we still need, information we need from the older guys. So yeah, we're just here to be a platform to discuss these things.
Yeah.
So Billy, what is the Wild Way?
Charles, the wild way is what we are calling the way of Christ. What it means to be a man in the 21st century, specifically living in an urban environment. We're not all just going to go out into the middle of the Grand Canyon, build a hut and live there and be some kind of back to nature dudes. There's a time and place for that, don't get me wrong. But like, how do we actually live as men in today's world? And so I think we all long to be somewhat wild, right? There's a spark in us that God has created to do something that's out of the ordinary, where risk is involved, where it's dangerous, where our hearts come alive. And we have to figure out how to do that in the day in, day out, to live from the heart. You mean modern society is so soul draining. Our lives are so tempting. They revolve around this phone and they're so habit forming. So how do we really live from the heart with eternal purpose that comes from an eternal God?
Yeah.
So,
good.
Pete, what do we want people who are watching this to get out of it?
Well, I want people, first of all, to get more clarity on that question right there.
Yeah.
And, I also want we hope that people will walk away with practical ways to, implement this in their daily walk, because lots of people have good ideas and kind of vague notions of what it means to be a man. But how do we go from this conversation to walking in the door to family or to being alone and live this out?
Yeah.
And feel confident in doing so.
That's awesome, man. And I love just the name that we came up with. It connects with what you said of like, how do we live this out? I think that as we discover why we're here and our purpose, that just makes the everyday decisions really clear. Right? Like if I know I'm here to love and to serve, then when I walk into work or I go into the kitchen or my kids are screaming, I don't have any kids, but hypothetically, your kids are screaming, then it's just a little bit more clear, right? And we can do it with real passion, real persistence, and we're just not going to give up. So that's the wild with a Y. Find your why, find your way, and we just want to live with eternal purpose every day.
Good.
So we got to start with the beginning. What does it mean to be a man? And that, depending on who you ask in our world, in our culture,
Get a bunch of different answers.
We're gonna get canceled on episode number 1
Already.
Bro, we gotta, Charles, I love your ability to be authentically yourself, and we in this group, in this podcast, are gonna be authentically ourselves,
Right.
and appropriate, but just no apologies. If you don't like it, you don't like it. It is what it is. But we just believe that manhood comes with the intention of God behind it.
Yeah.
God has created us as men on purpose. It's not an accident. It's not up to our culture to define. Of course, we live in culture, but we have a transcendent purpose that is really grounded in God. And I think that really plays itself out. God shows us that through the original story of Adam and then through the second Adam, Christ. So I want to just run down a couple key points, and then we'll just unpack those. So number 1, we're creating the image of God, and that means we are created to subdue, we are created to care for, we are created to procreate, and we are created for relationship. All that culminates in the person of Jesus. So Pete, man, why don't you just start us off? And now we're going to lose the format, and we're just going to jump into it. When you think of the image of God, what do you think of?
Well, if we're going back to Genesis and we're thinking about the image of God, I'm thinking of a God who created this universe first out of love, us out of love, and he wanted us to enjoy the place that he made.
Yeah.
And so he made us to enjoy that, but he also made us to be in relationship with him and to enjoy that relationship with him.
Yeah.
And so I think of a God who's loving, and I think of our identity in that love, wanting to live there with him and also reflect it to those around us.
That's just crazy though, isn't it? It's like God is like, yo, I want to make something that's like me. He wants to look at us as men and say, this one's like me.
Right.
Yeah.
That's so beautiful. That's so powerful to realize that that's not like my own idea, right? That's not my creation. I am God's intention. And that's what we're trying to like reclaim.
Yeah.
So Charles, when we hear like the word subdue, that for instantly is going to trigger a lot of people of like, toxic masculinity. We couldn't get 2 minutes in before we talked about it.
Already.
Oh my gosh. The machismo had to come out eventually. And Charles, when I think of machismo, you're the number one guy.
Not at all.
Just bleed machismo. Put it away, bro.
Put your shirt back on.
I can't help it, man. I can't help it. It's just who I am.
It's just who I am. So when you think of subdue, right? Like God says to Adam, subdue the world. Go into the world, subdue it. What do you think of?
Man, I just, a couple of things came to my mind. One, I think of Eden. Like that's what Eden was, was like heaven on earth, right? A piece of heaven on earth. Subdue, like that was just supposed to spread throughout the whole earth.
Yeah.
Obviously, even though the fall, Adam, Eve, it didn't end up that way, but it was restored through Jesus. So now when I think of the word subdue, it is us just bringing God's kingdom to earth, like just living that in our daily lives and in the mundane, at work, at home, wherever we are. It's just bringing the kingdom wherever we are. That's what comes to my mind.
Yeah. You just jumped straight to like the second part
jumped.
of the Bible. One thing that comes to mind for me, at least, is that order is not going to happen without intention.
Right.
Right. Like we actually live in an unorderly world. Like if we were to stop paving over roads, weeds would come in. Like civilization is an achievement.
Yeah.
And food doesn't happen by accident. Like we've got to go out and cultivate land. And God loved the garden, placed Adam in a good spot and said, hey, now I want you to go work this. I want you to go spread this goodness to other places. But that's going to require that you subdue chaos and bring order.
Subdue chaos and store order.
Yeah, and I think that's just like part of what it means to be a man. And I like a lot of times, like you see a little boy, they haven't learned how to do that yet. They're all chaos and no order, right? And that's part of our journey towards manhood is like.
Sounds a lot like you, Billy.
You know what? We can't.
At what stage did that change for him?
You know what? How was that changed? I'll be honest. Like
he's still going through puberty. It's all right.
Yeah. Well, I don't know about that. I just haven't grown up yet.
One of these days.
One of these days. Hey, this is therapy for me, really. That's what it comes down to. I'm just here to learn from you two guys. It's like you're probably wondering why I brought you here. This is an intervention for you child.
You thought that this was a podcast. Actually.
Yeah. But like just haven't learned how to channel it yet.
Yeah.
So Pete, you got to care. Second thing is we got to care.
Yeah.
We got to cultivate, right? What do you think it means to cultivate and care for creation?
What does it mean to cultivate and care for creation? I think it means that we have to think of someone and something other than ourselves. And I think, when we start thinking only of ourselves as it relates to those questions, things get destructive real quick. So what's best for this according to my purpose rooted in Christ? And that's where we can make these decisions of cultivating and caring for family, friends, neighbors, at work, the oppressed, injustice, all that.
Dude, I love that. I think that's such a entry point into a deeper reality is that our authority and our power is given to serve. Right?
Yeah.
Like authority and power are not they're not bad, but they're given to build up.
And not bad when used in the right way.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, yeah. I think and that's like what so many people have an issue with masculinity in our world is that they only see examples of power and authority to be used for their own privilege and to tear other people down.
Yeah.
Right. And that's, we can jump to the end here and say how Jesus just embodies that, what we would call servant leadership, or where he's got all the authority and power, but he cares for us, like when we don't deserve it.
Yeah.
He cultivates our hearts. He cultivates our lives and disciplines us to do so. So now Charles's favorite topic, procreate. You're going to see a theme here in this podcast, and Charles
don't listen to a word. I'm not married. There's no ring on this finger.
But we do like to joke. The only one here who has successfully done this so far, Peter. Tell us what do you
go?
We got one, two on the way.
Go.
Bun in the oven.
Bun in the oven.
You're technically a dog dad twice over.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So procreate. When you think of that, what do you think of?
I think of my daughter. We have a daughter from procreation.
Oh my god! What happened to being authentically ourselves? You had sex, Peter. Just say it. You probably did it more than once. And you're like, oh, how'd this happen?
Yeah.
We have a daughter now.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Pete. Go ahead, man.
Go ahead.
Well, we had sex, and we there's this app out there. I don't want to bash it. Definitely doesn't track the cycle correctly.
Okay,
we're not going to throw that
We're
down.
just going. We're just going way too technical for everybody.
Yeah. Well, had sex, sperm attached to the egg, and the rest is kind of history.
Health class 101.
Okay,
Yeah.
well,
And 9 months later, we had a living, breathing human
that's pretty great.
in our hands. In our hands. Started time that we did that, but
Yeah. I've heard that seeing your child born is like such a defining moment for a man. What was that like for you?
it was defining is a great word for it. It was so out of this world, peace, joy, all in one. I mean, my wife and I had been singing worship songs for the entire last like hour. And so when that happened, it was just like, I felt like the Holy Spirit was there with us. And it was just almost out of body experience for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Something I'll never forget.
I bet you Jordan wished it was an out of body experience. Right?
Yeah. Definitely made, in terms of the whole procreation thing, I'm glad I'm not a woman. And B, tons, like immense respect for all that. I mean, it's before the child comes, during birth, and the recovery. It's just incredible. The strength they have. I know I wouldn't have enough in me to do it. So
it's pretty dope, man.
Yeah. That's why you were created to be a man.
Yeah.
There you go. God knew you weren't strong enough to be.
He knew.
The wild way.
He said, if I gave this to Pete, he couldn't handle it. Let me make him a man.
Oh man, all the brownie points for Charles.
Yeah. We have more women listening to this now.
They find out Charles is single.
Oh god.
Oh, it's a wrap. I think something though, like typically when we think of like masculinity or manhood, what doesn't get attached to that, like, okay, we think of, discipline, strength, it takes mastery to go out and cultivate and to care for, but we don't typically think of being deeply relational. But we see that on the first page because God himself is relational.
Yeah.
And we're created to relate to God first and then to the creation and to each other. So what does it mean for us as men to relate to God and we're really fundamentally relational?
Yeah, well, just to tag on to that, when you think about why men are that way or perceived that way, I mean, I think of like the people that I loved growing up, Clint Eastwood, Pierce Brosnan, James Bond, kind of the men that just like, they go out, they shoot, they do whatever, they don't really talk, they don't dive into their emotions. And when we become attached to those characters, even if they are real people, it's easy to think that's how it is. If you have a father who's that way or not a father that way, it's easy to think that's how it is. Yeah. And so I just don't think there's enough incredibly great examples around, at least in our media or culture, to show like what that relationship looks like.
So we create ourselves in the image of John Wayne.
I was Clint Eastwood, but
Clint Eastwood, okay.
Yeah,
probably better.
Yeah, way better.
Yeah. What do you think, Charles? We recreate ourselves.
Why do we create ourselves?
Yeah. Why are like men typically not thought of as deeply relational?
Just from the examples I've had, because we're not, like, just naturally, I know from like myself, I am, and maybe this is because of the examples that I had, but just naturally, I'm not just deeply relational. I had to, and still am learning to be that way. Like my dad wasn't a deeply relational guy. So is it because I got it from him because that's the way, like the model I saw, or is it just because it's how I am made? I don't know. But yeah, I know that a lot of guys are not, but you know, once I have like actually submitted to the process of trying to be relational, like committing to like the small group that we're in, I actually, man, see how much it's needed and how helpful it is. Like bro, we wouldn't be here today if, you know, if we didn't have a relationship.
Totally. And I'm going to call a little bit of BS on that one, Charles, because
What?
I think that we absolutely are deeply relational and we suppress it, right?
Okay.
Because it takes vulnerability and a level of realness, right? Like, because I know a lot of guys that would open up to girls, but they would never open up to another guy, right? Like you know, all the emotional attachment issues of like getting connected to a girl. But then like you try and talk to that guy and he's like just a stone wall.
Why is that? Why is it so natural for a guy to open up to a girl? Because I actually agree with that.
Yeah.
But I have my own idea, but
I think
I'm interested to
it's
see.
typically, and I want to hear what you guys think, probably because you feel more comfortable being vulnerable with a woman than with another man. Because you think that this guy's going to judge you, right? And then it's like some sort of competition. We don't think of ourselves as being relational because we don't think of God as being relational. It's just a trickle down effect. We don't have good examples. That wasn't set for us. And so we close off that part of our hearts, but we end up bleeding inside. So many guys are walking around limping because they can't be themselves. They can't be let out like, hey, I'm afraid. Hey, I'm anxious. Hey, I feel insecure. So what do we do? I mean, everybody has those feelings. And I think men and women typically just process those very differently. Yeah. And guys, we just shut down. And I think that's the beauty of being reconnected to God is we're reconnected to ourselves by knowing Him. Like we are parts of our hearts that have been forever broken and shut down and bound up are now awakened with new life. We learn how to love. We learn how to be vulnerable. And for me, I find strength in being vulnerable. It takes practice, it takes discipline, but absolutely, I can't just muscle through everything.
Yeah, good.
What do you think, Pete?
Yeah, I think we were, like you said, God created us in His image, had the relationship with Him, and then He gave man a counterpart, female. And I think that was intentional, very intentional too. Yeah. And I think it's like we joked at the beginning, like, oh, let's just go build a hut in the Grand Canyon.
Yeah.
But we were created for community, so we need people because we can't do it all on our own.
Yeah.
The man who thinks that he can falls off the horse real quick.
Yeah. What do you think about like? Do you long for a band of brothers, like to just be with a bunch of guys who you get like your ride or die buddies?
Yeah, I do.
What about you, Charles?
Now I'll say yeah, but if you're gonna ask me, have I always desired that? No.
Okay. I'd say definitely. That's like one of the core desires of my heart is like to have a group of guys that I like could go to battle with. You know, like who do I belong with? Where are my comrades? My guys I go with. And so, you know, I think that that's probably something that maybe personality driven, maybe kind of deeply ingrained in our hearts. I do think that like as we get closer to God, it gets reawakened. But I know for me, that's one of my core longings.
Definitely think as you get closer to God, He, you know, lets you see how important it is to have that.
Yeah.
Again, naturally, it's not something that I desired, but getting closer to Him, like when you read the Bible, you see examples of brothers. Like Jesus had 12 disciples.
Yeah.
Like 12 of them. He could have done everything by himself if he wanted to. But he
snapped.
decided, right, he could have had it done. Thanos. But he didn't. He showed us a model of how to live our lives. So
yeah,
I think, definitely something that I desire now because that's what God wants us.
Yeah, man. Bro, you bring up a great point. I think that Jesus takes the theory and makes it tangible.
Right.
Like, what does it mean to be a true man? Because Adam fell. Adam failed. And every point where Adam failed, Jesus came through and He succeeded. And so when you think of Jesus as the ultimate man and as our ultimate example, what do you think of?
Man, the first thing that comes to my mind is servant. Like He came to serve. The ultimate man. He did not come like they thought He was going to come to destroy the Roman Empire, like take over by force. He came as a servant to give His life. So the ultimate man, Jesus, came to give. He came to serve. Yeah. So we should be doing the same thing.
Yeah, I would say what I think of that is that He was the exact opposite, kind of like we said, completely countercultural. even till today's standards.
Yeah.
But you look at what impact he left and just the way he lived, and it's just where are those men? That's what I want to be around.
Yeah.
And he also came here for God's glory too. I mean, he was driven to the cross for the glory of God.
Yeah.
And it was evident in everything he did. There's no blemishes. So a perfect example to follow, to look up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, I love what you guys just said. Like, I think of what you said, Charles, of he came to serve, he came with a purpose.
Yeah.
Right? Like, and that's what our heart is to live with purpose. And for you is to live with purpose and to see that in the person of Jesus. And I think that that's something that's so tangible, is because like we tend to think of Jesus as just some dude, but like, and then our cultural conceptions of Jesus are, quite honestly, they're pretty lame.
They are.
They're a little bit effeminate. They're very like soft-spoken.
Yeah.
Like we don't have a three-dimensional character in our culture of who Jesus is until you actually get in the Bible and you read it.
Yeah.
And I love how he comes as the Lion of Judah and the Lamb to lay down his life. So like that's what it means for me to be a man. And I think that's one of the clearest ways to communicate it, is like to be like Christ is to be a servant and to be gentle, to be kind, to be welcoming to children, to have every woman feel safe around me. No woman should ever feel like they're going to be taken advantage of or they're going to be disrespected around me. And yet my enemies should be terrified. The devil should quake in his boots every time I open my eyelids.
Right.
I need to be dangerous. I do the world no favors by being a wimpy man. And I mean, this honestly gets me so irate and so fired up. I'm like, be dangerous. Like we can't be wimps.
Yeah.
Like, especially in our world right now, our world is fracturing at an alarming rate. And if you're a wimpy man with no convictions, if you got no teeth, bro, what are you good for?
Describe a wimpy man.
Bro, we'll
In
get
your
into
opinion.
it. We're definitely going to dive into this later, like in more depth. But a wimpy man does not have any convictions that guide his life. He's not willing to sacrifice for anything. Bro, if you're going to serve, if you're going to love, it's going to cost you a lot to do it. And truth is always what drives sacrifice, because you believe something's going to be worth it. And so because you don't have truths that guide your life, you're not willing to do anything about it. And you just be wrong. Just do something.
Passive.
Yeah.
Passivity.
And we all are guilty of that. I'm guilty of that. That's part of the reason I get so fired up, is because I recognize that in my own heart. I'm like, dude, I got to kill this part. But dude, Jesus was all the way in. He had fire in his bones. He's not just some like weak boned, like fade into the background kind of dude.
Right.
Oh, yeah, man.
I like what you said. It's because he had a purpose. He knew what his purpose was. So his life and his actions came out of that.
Yes.
Because he knew what he was here to do.
Dude.
Yeah.
Not everybody knows what they're here to do.
Yeah.
Why do you think so, Pete? Why don't people, or men specifically, know their purpose?
Well, man, I think some men think they know their purpose, and I think it's wrapped up in the wrong things. So I think a lot of men, at least from what I see, have experienced my own life and walk, purpose gets wrapped up in the identity of work, of providing. And so maybe there's a confusion element there. And then there's probably another part that's just a lack of reflection, introspection. Not that you have to like spend hours a day like pouring, but ask yourself those questions. Why are you here? What do you really think your purpose is? If your purpose is to make money, provide for a family, build a home or two, 4 cars or 5, what happens if that gets taken away? What happens when it all does go away? What happens when you get it? What then? You achieved it. So then what? So finding and like going through these questions, even if it's in your mind, and just walking them out to the end. How do you feel about it?
Yeah. I love that. And I think that comes back to the heart of why we're here. Is you just got to keep asking why until you have a good reason. Why make money? Right? It's not bad.
Yeah.
Why have your 4th car? Why have this huge status? All of it will die. You will be forgotten.
Yeah.
Right? And so that's why we want to live for eternal purpose.
Yeah.
Something that's grounded outside of ourselves, outside of time. And that can only be found in a transcendent God. And so we really only have temporary and, I'm a little bit more existential. I would say completely meaningless. Like it's just an illusion, whatever your life would be, if it's grounded in the here and now.
Yeah.
And so, and I think that purpose, Pete, is what connected to what you said, Charles, of Jesus was both, and he let his purpose guide him into when to turn one on and to when to turn one off.
Yeah.
So because he knew he was here to be the Messiah, to love and to serve, to rescue his people, he knew I need to be gentle and caring in this situation, and I need to be fierce and oppose them and confront this lie in this moment. And I think that that's kind of our heart too, is like, hey, if we find our purpose, we will find what to do in each situation.
Yeah.
That's like purpose is our North Star, and that purpose keeps us guided.
Purpose is like is your North Star.
Yeah, like what am I here to
that.
do?
Yeah.
So, but Pete, how do you think, because you're a successful dude, right? You roll with successful people. How do you...
Big baller.
Big baller brand.
Have you heard
I'm
of
sure
Kairos?
have you heard of Kairos? Yeah. No, we're going to get more into this. I mean, we're going to talk a lot about this, is how do we walk in success? I mean, Jesus was ultimately successful. He achieved his purpose. But like, how do we not just be self-flagellating, beating ourselves up kind of guys? Like, because I think a lot of us have drive.
Yeah.
So Jesus had drive, and how do we walk with purpose and drive if you're a successful dude?
That's a great question. And go ahead.
I was gonna say like Christ. Yeah.
Yeah. I was, because I beat myself up a lot. I'm like, well, I'm not where I want to be just yet. And then that can lead to a whole cycle. And then it's like, well, what is the just yet? When would it be enough? And then that brings me back to all the things that the Lord has provided, as simple as a roof over my head to a healthy baby. Yeah. And just like, you don't even need what you think you want. You don't. And so success, like that can be a whole separate thing as well. It really is reminding myself that it's not something the world sets. And for me, success is like being able to, a successful day would be able to, do the work and know that the Lord is behind it all. But with each decision, with each moment, temptation that comes my way, a successful day is knowing that I turned to the Lord and I felt confident in every single decision because of that.
Yeah.
So it's not so much as an achievement and a goal. When I bring it back, it's kind of part of the process.
Yeah.
So
just doing what you got to do today.
Yeah, and weaving the Lord into everything.
Yeah. Not keeping them segmented or isolated. Like, this is my Jesus time and this is my work time.
Right. Yeah. Tough balance.
Yeah, and I think that's Jesus says that he's like, I'm always about my Father's work.
Yeah.
And
my nourishment comes from doing the will of the Father. I love that line.
Yeah, I don't think he started that when he started his public ministry.
Yeah.
He did that as a carpenter.
Yeah.
So whether, our day job, programming or being a tech support or selling journals and or for me it's a little bit easier as a minister.
Yeah.
Like we can be doing the will of our Father.
Yeah.
Finding that purpose. And I think that's why Jesus is the ultimate example, is that he lived that perfect life to show us how to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I would say that I think of when he was at the well and he had traveled all day, sat there, disciples came back, he had talked to the woman, probably hungry and thirsty, and they're like, did someone give him water, food? And he's like, I have food you know nothing about. My nourishment comes from the Father. And I think that no matter what kind of success you've tasted, big, small, whatever, there's nothing greater than tasting him and knowing him, and that fulfillment is why we're also created, to feel that joy, to know that joy that comes from him. It's out of this world. So another car, something might add something right now for a bit, but then it's going to go away.
Yeah. So. Bro, I don't know of a better way to wrap it up than that. I think that's it.
Yeah. It's good.
So find your why, find your way, the wild way. We like to say around here as we land this episode is whatever you do, find your purpose, live for eternal purpose, and you know what, guys? Just go be wild.
Go be wild.
Go be wild.
Born to be wild.
We're gonna cut that.
Thank you for watching this episode of the Wild Way Podcast. If you enjoyed it, give us a like, subscribe, comment below, or share with a friend. Thanks, guys.